There it is. An insanely rare tornado event in the 2025 Utah fire tornado. Okay, let's watch the fire tornado because I don't even know anything about those.
2025, an incredibly rare meteorological phenomenon occurred near LaSalle, Utah. It all began 2 days earlier on July 10th when a 68-year-old man was burning a pile of sagebrush behind his house. After burning the brush, he improperly discarded the ashes, which
Uh-oh.
in turn led to a small fire.
So you're telling me one guy is this gonna be caused by one guy that did not throw or put out his fire correctly? Hi, Hilami. Hi. How are you doing? Welcome in.
That small fire quickly grew larger and larger to 50 acres in size. It was at this point, around 3 in the afternoon, that several locals reported the fire to officials. Due to gusty 35-mile-per-hour winds, by the next morning on July 11th, the fire was over 4,000 acres in size. Several buildings had already been consumed by the flames, and 250 people had to be evacuated as the growing fire was lingering closer and closer to their homes. Firefighting crews began to work around the clock to slow the spread, but despite their efforts, the fire had grown to over 6,000 acres by that evening. Things had gotten out of control. On the morning of July 12th, the fire was still going strong and growing by the hour. By noon, the fire was nearly 8,000 acres in size. Several
All because of one person. Can you imagine? I wonder if they're going to tell us about if anything happened with that one guy. Can you imagine, like, oh, yeah, oh, it'll be fine. I'm just going to toss it out here. Nah, it won't burn anymore. It's not hot enough. Well, guess what? Now the whole place is on fire. Congratulations, dude.
more crews arrived to help extinguish the flames, but suddenly, around 1 in the afternoon, something strange was beginning to take place. The fire had grown so large that it had created its own weather system, what is known as a firestorm. The constant layers
Firestorm?
of smoke had risen so high into the atmosphere that they began to cool and then transform into condensation. A pyrocumulonimbus cloud with its own weather system had formed.
What? What? Fire can make its own storm? Well, that's new.
Now, while this sort of thing is
For me.
uncommon, it isn't anything that hadn't been seen before. That is until the entire weather system began to rotate. Crosswinds from the LaSalle Mountains were interacting with the storm system in a unique and dangerous way, causing the whole thing to spin. And then all of a sudden, a massive tornado began to form. This was an incredibly rare meteorological event. We're not talking about a small
Congratulations, sir. The little bit of stick that was still a little bit hot that you threw to the side. You made tornadoes. You have created tornadoes, sir. Number one, that's freaking insane. And this is going to go down in history. Number two, why would you do this? Why? Why have you done this?
little fire whirl. These things are actually quite common. No, this was a full-fledged
We on
fire
Hellfire?
tornado. And the
Helldivers?
footage is absolutely insane.
That's not small either. That's big.
This was an actual threatening tornado that had formed from a wildfire.
What do you do about that? What do you do? Oh, hey, there's a tornado warning. Okay, well, this one you might just want to actually run away from. What? Yeah, this is a fire tornado. Hope you can run fast. Hope your car can go fast. You got enough gas? Well, can't go get any. Good luck. Hi, Modesto.
Looking at radar and velocity scans, you can clearly see rotation. The tornado lasted 12 minutes and mostly stayed in the same place. Thankfully, there were no fatalities. However, there was some structural damage and one fire engine did get caught inside. The
What?
footage from this is also insane.
How do you just go inside a fire tornado?
Surprisingly, that fire engine only received minor damage.
That's impressive. Run and pray doesn't go in your direction. True. At least it didn't like travel a whole lot. That's good. But Shoot, what these firefighters do? Like, hey, this is pretty cool. You want to see what happens if you drive in it? Yeah, yeah, Joe, let's go. Head straight forward. Go towards the tire tornado, the fire tornado. That's terrifying. You're driving through hell right now.
Surprisingly, that fire engine only received minor damage. The Grand Junction, Colorado National Weather
Fast was the
Service
wind, I
office
wonder?
actually went out and surveyed the tornado's destruction. They concluded the damage was consistent with wind speeds around 122 miles per hour and officially gave the tornado an EF2 rating.
I'm surprised. If that house got hit by the tornado, if that's one of the actual pictures of it. Hello, sir. I'm surprised it didn't catch fire. Did it?
2025 had a lot of very interesting and historic tornado events. The most prominent might be the first EF5 in over 10 years,
Oh yeah.
the Enderlin, North Dakota
I watched
EF5.
that one. The
But to
Enderlin.
me, the July 12th LaSalle, Utah EF2 fire tornado was the most interesting of the year. Perhaps
So what F scale is that one? What the 100 something miles an hour? What F scale is that? I don't know the scales on the top of my head.
even the most rare. There have been stories and footage of true fire pyro tornadoes before, but this was the first time in history that one had been so well documented. I mean, the footage,
Oh, he
the
said
flying
that.
debris. This
I'm just so like in a trance with these dang fire tornadoes. It's so crazy to me. I guess I just didn't hear him say EF2. I heard the wind speed, but I didn't hear the F2 part.
is some apocalyptic stuff here.
That's crazy. That's terrible.
Utah is not known at all for tornadoes. There was the
They're known for
famous
fire
downtown
tornadoes.
Salt Lake City EF2 tornado of
I'm not pregnant.
1999, but overall, tornadoes in the state are quite rare. That means that the 2025 Deer Creek EF2 fire tornado is actually one of
Sorry, did you just have lightning outside of your window?
that means that the 2025 Deer Creek
Man, almost caught it too. Or is that just? Oh, I think that was just a screen or something.
EF2 fire tornado is actually one of the most significant tornado events in the state's history. Today, we are uncovering the truth behind the insanely rare natural phenomenon that is the firenado. What are the different types/levels of fire tornadoes? What are some other historic examples? And will these become more common in the future? That's what we're going to talk about. Let's get into it, and let's start off by going over the different types/levels of firenados.
I'm sorry. There's different types of fire nados. Not just a one thing. Is there's different types of fire nados. I don't like this. I'm not. No, I am staying away from Utah. Nope. Not known for tornadoes, but fire tornadoes. Nah, I'm good.
Starting with the most common form and the most well-known, what we call the level 1 fire whirl, sometimes referred to as a fire devil. These are small vortices of fire, smoke, and ash. These are very similar to dust devils in terms of their formation. They are relatively small and are caused by convection/rising hot air. Fire is hot, just FYI, and
Yeah.
hot air, it rises due to convection. So the air above the fire is rising, and sometimes a little swirling eddy comes in, that hot air goes up, and then a little spinning flame forms. They form most often in windy conditions. Not like tornado windy, but like normal windy, like 30-mile-per-hour winds. These flame eddies can be close to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. They average about 5 meters or 15 feet wide and are on average 10 to 50 meters, aka 33 to 160 feet tall. Usually they only last for a minute or so. I see these pop up all the time on YouTube Shorts, on Instagram Reels, and some YouTubers have even been able to recreate these with fans. They look pretty insane. But they are only our level 1 fire tornado. While yes, they are obviously dangerous, they are not quite as dangerous as the next level, the level 2 pyronado. These are kind of the more extreme version of the fire whirl. These are a little larger and more violent. They tend to be between 10 and 50 meters wide and hundreds of meters tall underneath a pyrocumulus cloud. A pyrocumulus cloud is a cumulus cloud that formed from a large fire. Okay, so stop.
Oh.
Let's talk about that really quick. What is going on here? When you have a larger fire, like a wildfire/forest fire/bush fire, huge amounts of smoke get lofted high into the atmosphere. These can then create a firestorm. A firestorm is, well, a storm, a weather system created by a large fire. When the hot air from the fire rises, it creates a vacuum that brings in more and more air from the side. These smoke clouds then rise higher up into the cooler part of the atmosphere where they turn into condensation clouds.
Isn't it kind of like volcanoes? Because I know volcanoes can like create storms because of like the the heat and the smoke and all that coming from them, right? I guess. I don't know. I just never knew like wildfires can cause this. This. That's crazy. Yeah, sort of. I know like you can see lightning and stuff of a volcano when it erupts. But this, first of all, cool jet. I freaking love jets. They're really, really cool. I want to fly a jet. Anyway, that was my sidetracked self.
These are known as pyrocumulus clouds, aka
Pyrocumulus.
cumulus
Fire.
clouds created by a fire. These pyrocumulus clouds can transform into thunderstorms that can even cause lightning and black rain filled with ash and soot. This is a photo of a large pyrocumulus cloud over Hiroshima right after it was destroyed by an atomic bomb.
Oh.
For a long time, people thought that this was the mushroom cloud from the atomic bomb. It wasn't until much later that people realized it was actually a pyrocumulus storm system from the fires that were caused by the nuclear.
So they got hit by the nuclear bomb and then went through a firestorm after that? That's terrifying.
Bomb.
I'll read about
It's a
that
pretty
part.
large cloud, but we'll get to even larger clouds in a moment. So back to level 2, pyro tornadoes. Sometimes, if conditions are just right, larger fire devils can form inside or near a large forest fire, and on rare occasion, their heights can reach the base of a pyrocumulus cloud. Pyronados tend to last 5 to 10 minutes and are mostly filled with smoke and ash. Wind speeds can get close to 70 miles per hour in the EF1 range. Okay, so we have discussed pyrocumulus clouds and their associated firestorms. But if conditions in the atmosphere are just right, if a fire is very intense, these towering pyrocumulus clouds can grow larger and larger and larger and even higher into the atmosphere, where they can then form the ultra rare Pyrocumulonimbus cloud, aka
Pyrocumulonimbus. That is a long word. Cumulonimbus flammagenitus. That's probably not how you pronounce it. I know he's about to say it, but what? Say it again.
and even higher into the atmosphere, where they can then form the ultra rare Pyrocumulonimbus cloud, aka Cumulonimbus flammagenitus. Wow, what a word. Okay, cumulonimbus clouds, also referred to as thunderhead clouds, are the clouds that produce large and often violent thunderstorms. And sometimes they can develop an inner rotating mesocyclone. These are called supercells, and it is the supercell
And
thunderstorm
now we're just turning into like a normal storm, but with fire involved. Yo, blood my enemies. Thank you for the 8 months. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
that produces the classic Wizard of Oz violent tornado that we all know and some of us love. So we know fires can create pyrocumulonimbus clouds, but can there be a pyro supercell, a rotating mesocyclonic pyrocumulonimbus supercell cloud?
Yo, if I ever rebrand, I'm gonna be a pyrocumulon. I'm gonna be a pyrocumulonimbus cloud, but in a person form. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? That'd be kind of cool. I can have like fluffy, like white hair, and then be like with fire aspects, like fire, like red and white hair. That'd be kind of cool. And then I will make tornadoes.
In theory, yes, during an extremely rare occasion, which brings us to level 3, true tornadic fire tornadoes. These nightmarish tornadoes can be over a mile wide with wind speeds in the EF2 to EF4 range, or about 100 to 200 miles per hour. Not only is there a fire blazing all around, but winds are lofting roofs off of homes, tossing cars, and flattening trees. They can last for about 30 minutes. Along with fire tornadoes, you can also get lightning, rain, and hail. There have even been reports of black hail caused by a pyrocumulonimbus storm.
Black hail, that's actually kind of cool. No, I'm not pregnant, but here he stands, a silent guardian, a watchful protector, a dark knight. Born of grief and forged in shadow, I know you're on that table again. Get down before you fall and hurt yourself. Welcome home, honey. I hope you had a good day at work. Do you want blue or lemon lime creatine Gatorade before your workout? Honey? Justice. If you want to get strong and energized to fight crime, drink Gatorade by Gamer Subs. Zero sugar, electrolytes for hydration,
plus more benefits and flavors of blue and lemon lime. Get yours today by using code SPIT at checkout to save 10%. Justice, justice, justice.
Potentially, unfortunately, over a
Yeah,
city.
tumblers are off
2,
too.
that fire creates a larger pyrocumulonimbus cloud. And then finally, 3, the atmosphere needs to be favorable for supercell development and tornado genesis. You need some atmospheric instability, sufficient CAPE, and strong vertical wind shear. The other factor that makes these incredibly super rare is that even if you have the perfect conditions, you have the cape, all that stuff, the fire itself is so windy and chaotic that the environment is very unstable, and that can hinder the organized nature of a supercell and its accompanying tornado genesis. So a lot of things have to come together. In modern meteorological history, there have only been a few examples of true level 3 fire tornadoes, the most recent being the 2025 Deer Creek fire tornado that we mentioned in the intro. Surprisingly, the National Weather Service never issued a tornado warning with this event because the rotation was so subtle and so quick that there just wasn't time to issue one. However, in 2020, for the first time in recorded history, the National Weather Service did issue a tornado warning from a fire-induced tornado. On August 15th, 2020, there was a large wildfire near Loyalton, California. This wildfire produced a large pyrocumulonimbus cloud, and the National Weather Service thought it might be able to spawn a tornado. So they issued the very first tornado warning that was related to a pyrocumulonimbus cloud.
Do they tell them to do anything specific? Like, hey, there's a fire tornado. We're just letting you know. Good luck.
There were several other smaller fire tornadoes reported from that event, but thankfully there was never anything crazy. There was never a true level 3 fire tornado, so the warning was able to expire shortly after it was released. Another prominent modern example of a true fire tornado came during the 2018 Carr Fire in Redding, California. Like the Deer Creek tornado, you can clearly see strong rotation. This tornado was incredibly given an EF3 rating from the National Weather Service with winds over 140 miles per hour, making it one of the strongest tornadoes in California's history and definitely one of the strongest fire tornadoes ever recorded.
No credit. Thank you for the Thank you for the 5 kit subs. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
The level 3 mesocyclonic fire tornado is a somewhat new field in meteorology. In fact, one wasn't fully observed until 2003 during the Canberra bushfires in Australia, specifically at Mount Arawang on January 18th. And this tornado we actually have footage of captured by Tom Bates.
Holy Jesus. This is bad news.
That's just another normal day in Australia. Another fire tornado. That's terrifying.
It's coming straight down towards David Nelson's place, like a tornado. Just like a big fireball tornado, look at it. Oh.
Ugh. It's hard to see, but just see that.
You can see right there, yep, that's definitely a tornado mixed within the wildfire. This fire tornado had wind speeds at 160 miles per hour, giving it an EF3 classification and so far the highest rated fire tornado in recorded history. This video also records a flashover event where hundreds of acres instantly burned in only a matter of seconds.
What?
This was caused by a strong inflow of oxygen from the updraft, and it may have played a role in the fire tornado's formation. But if we dip further back in time, there are several other rather grim fire tornado incidents, the most somber being the 1923 Tokyo fire tornado. After a series of large earthquakes, several fires broke out throughout Tokyo. Unfortunately, there was a typhoon located off the coast that fanned the flames into a massive urban fire.
Earthquakes and now fire? Good grief. No break in between. Thank you for the biddies.
A large fire tornado then formed and took the lives of 38,000 people.
I thought he was going to start up at 38. And I thought that was already a high number. 38,000? This art's scary, by the way. 38,000?
Fire tornado then formed and took the lives of 38,000 people. Seriously, it actually happened. This event is incredibly sad, and I'm actually releasing a members-only video covering the event along with this video, so if you're a member, be sure to check it out. Oh, but hey, by the way, if you want to become a channel member, that would be awesome. I just launched this not that long ago. I'm kind of testing it out, but what I'm going to do is do a monthly members-only video, as well as priority reply to comments, and I'm also going to do a monthly members-only live stream. So be sure to check that out if you're interested, but let's go back to historic fire tornado events. The very first recorded instance of what is believed to be a true fire tornado occurred during the 1871 Peshtigo fire, specifically over the town of Peshtigo in Wisconsin. The Peshtigo fire was a huge forest fire that burned 1.2 million acres of the northeastern part of Wisconsin on October 8, 1871. But during the Peshtigo fire, the townsfolk of both Peshtigo and the nearby town of Williamsonville claimed to see several large fire tornadoes form. These large fire tornadoes then destroyed numerous buildings, as well as lofted rail cars high into the sky. Another very tragic event where people resorted to—
Why do I feel like there's a lot of events with fire tornadoes, but I've never heard of them? Do they just talk about the fire part? Are these like written down in history books somewhere? Like, I've never heard of this, even though history was like one of my weakest subjects because I don't really get taught a whole lot, so I don't really know a lot about history. But it's like, oh yeah, you know, there's a fire tornado here. Oh, there's a fire tornado there. Oh yeah, there's a fire tornado there. Yeah, that happened several times. What? Why are you hiding those?
to seeking shelter underwater in a river to avoid the heat and their demise. And of course, there are other examples during World War II, where there were huge fires throughout Europe and Japan from fire bombings. One specific fire tornado was reported during the bombing of Hamburg, Germany. This fire tornado was 1,500 feet tall with winds over 100 miles per hour. One eyewitness account of the Hamburg fire said this: "The firestorm was now raging through all the streets. We had only just reached the door to the air raid shelter. At this moment, something snapped in a neighbor, and caught up in the panic, he took his bed cover and wanted out of the shelter. None of us could stop him. We saw him still, but only as a living torch carried by the firestorm, flying through the air. We were all deeply shocked by this. Our situation at this point was almost hopeless." This is kind of a dark video. Okay.
Yeah,
Another somewhat interesting
terrifying.
case of pyrotornadogenesis came during the San Luis Obispo fire of April 7th, 1926. This case is interesting because this is a really solid example of tornadoes being spawned by a pyro supercell outside of the burning area, like a normal tornado. The fire was initially caused by a bolt of lightning striking an oil reserve, creating a huge explosion. The fire created its own weather system with a Pyrocumulonimbus cloud that reportedly produced over 100 small to medium-sized tornadoes. Check out some of these photos of the tornadoes that were spawned. Incredible. One of these tornadoes was even destructive and life-threatening. So this specific tornado formed when the initial fire reached a new oil reserve. When it happened, the whole thing went up in a flashover event, kind of like what we talked about earlier. Eyewitnesses—
Why is this like logo so like cutesy and fun, and then behind it is just absolute trauma and chaos? MyFootage.com. Look at this giant fire tornado. Like, can we change the logo a little bit?
claimed that when these flames went thousands of feet into the air, a large fire tornado suddenly formed out of nowhere. Said fire tornado then moved away from the fire out over the plains, where it would destroy a trailer, claiming 2 lives. Others were thrown from the tornado and survived. It seemed that every time a new oil reserve exploded and went up in flames, a new fire tornado formed. The furthest any tornado traveled from the fire was about 3 miles. That's pretty crazy. The atmosphere in general was pretty unstable at this time due to another storm system, so that's likely the main factor in tornadogenesis. Remember, this whole thing started from a lightning strike, so clearly the weather was not ideal. Alright, so let's talk about the chances of a severe and deadly fire tornado in the future. Who's at risk? What are the atmospheric conditions that can create such horrific monsters? And is there a way to warn people in the moments leading up to a fire tornado? In terms of areas that are most at risk for fire tornadoes, obviously those who live in places where forest fires frequently occur, like the West, California,
Far west.
Washington, Oregon, are at risk. Of course, major wildfires can occur in the east as well. The Peshtigo fire in Wisconsin is one example. But if we want to adequately warn people about the risk of fire tornado formations in the future,
Hi,
we
Dave.
must
Have a good
learn
night.
from the past. The deadliest fire tornadoes in history had two major risk factors. One, obviously a large fire had formed, as well as the firestorm, and two, the atmosphere was relatively unstable. In 1923 in Tokyo, Japan, for example, there was the nearby typhoon. In 1926, the San Luis Obispo fire spawned tons of level 2 tornadoes, and this was likely due to an unstable atmosphere and a nearby storm system. So large fires and bad weather are not a good combination, unless there's a lot of rain. That could be helpful. Hit it with the downburst. That would be very helpful during a fire. Okay, sorry, this is kind of a serious video.
I'm kind of curious
Last
now.
year in Los Angeles, specifically the Pacific Palisades, Malibu, and Altadena, went up in flames in one of the costliest and worst natural disasters in U.S. history. This really was an unprecedented event. Thankfully, a proper firestorm/tornado did not form during this event. Why? Well, this event was caused by a very intense Santa Ana wind pattern with winds approaching 100 miles per hour. These intense winds hindered the formation of a pyrocumulonimbus cloud. Classic firestorms often intensify under comparatively lighter background winds, enough to ventilate and spread the fire, but not so strong that they dominate the circulation, allowing the fire's own convective engine to become the main driver. Thankfully, even though we've only had a few incidents, we have learned a decent amount about pyrotornadogenesis that we may be able to see the warning signs before they occur. And then we can get said information out ahead of time to save lives. Unfortunately, fire tornadoes and footage of fire tornadoes will likely become more common in the decades ahead. Thankfully,
People are gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, they're happening more often." No, it's because we're catching up more often. Ugh. There's still parts of the buildings in the Peshtigo River. That's insane. Now I kind of want to look at these events.
though, our building materials are not nearly as combustible as the building materials behind historic deadly urban fire tornadoes. So there is some hope. But yes, thank you so much for watching. If you're a member, be sure to check out the bonus video. We'll see you next time.
Clap. Wow. Huh. Well, that was a lot of information. Also very terrifying. A lot of events with that happening.